The sky was already bruised with evening when I pulled my truck into the driveway, every muscle in my body trembling from a 16-hour shift. My name is Ethan Vale, 27 years old, and I had spent the day hauling steel in a drizzle that never stopped. Cement dust still clung to my boots like grey armour. My palms burned from rope burns, and the scent of diesel refused to leave my skin. All I wanted was the simplest of mercies: hot water, a warm plate, and a bed that didn't sway like scaffolding. But when I slid my key into the front door of the house I grew up in, it refused to turn. At first, I thought exhaustion had clumsy hands. I jiggled, pressed, cursed under my breath, even glanced at the brass numbers on the door to make sure I hadn't staggered into the wrong life. No mistake. This was my mother Nora's house, the place that had once smelled like cinnamon candles and orange Gatorade. The lock clicked from the inside. The door opened, and there stood Carla Whitmore, my stepmother. Yoga pants, tank top, a phone welded to her palm, disdain etched across her face like permanent makeup. Behind her, sprawled on the couch, was her son, Brandon, wearing my hoodie like a badge of conquest, thumbs dancing across his phone as his unemployed friend dug elbow deep into a bag of chips I had bought. "Oh," Carla said with a faux innocent smile. "Back early, Ethan?" "My key doesn't work," I muttered, lifting it as though it might explain itself. "We changed the locks," she said smoothly, as if announcing the weather. "If you want to stay, it's $30,000, back rent, utilities." "Your brother deserves a vacation. You're in construction, you can afford it." Her words landed like steel beams across my shoulders. For a heartbeat, I wasn't 27 but 12 again, watching her carry boxes into this house right after my mother's funeral. Back then, she had said, "Yeah, call me Carla." Not stepmom, that's too formal. I'd later realize too formal was code for don't expect me to love you. "Did Dad approve this?" I asked, my voice flat. She smirked. "He's overseas, which means this is my house when he's gone. My rules." Brandon chuckled without looking up, a bag of my groceries spilling crumbs across the couch cushions I had picked out myself. I should have shouted, should have shoved my way inside. But I didn't. I simply nodded once, the duffel strap biting into my shoulder. Then I turned and walked away. No slammed doors, no raised voice, just the low growl of my truck engine as it swallowed the ache in my chest. That night, I curled up on a plywood platform under the construction site scaffolding, wrapped in a fluorescent safety vest for warmth. The air reeked of wet cement. I stared at unfinished beams cutting the night sky, counting bolts instead of sheep. But exhaustion couldn't smother memory. I remembered the way the house used to feel, my mom's 2 long hugs that nearly cracked your ribs, just to remind you she loved you. Before the accident, before Carla painted over Nora's walls and replaced family photos with stock art. And as I lay there shivering, I remembered something Carla didn't know. Years earlier, Dad had quietly transferred the deed to me on my 21st birthday. He never explained why, but lying there, staring at the night sky, I understood. He knew who Carla really was. And I realized I didn't need fists or shouting to reclaim what was mine. I needed paper. Rain hammered the tin roof of the site trailer, a percussion that blended with the groan of steel beams above. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours on that plywood platform, but the exhaustion no longer numbed me. It sharpened into something steadier, resolve. My boots were still damp, my jacket stiff with dust, but I walked into the site office with purpose. Miguel Ortiz, my foreman, raised an eyebrow. "Vale, you look like hell." "I've slept in worse," I said, dropping my duffel near the heater. "Got a question. You ever heard of a landlord changing locks on someone living there?" He frowned. Illegal as hell. Even for tenants who don't pay, you go through court. Self-help eviction, they call it. That'll get us sued quick. The words lit a fuse in me. Illegal. Not just cruel, not just petty. Carla had crossed a line written in law, not just morality. Miguel dialed a number on his phone. Union's got a legal referral. Talk to Ava. Smart girl, sharp teeth. She'll walk you through. That afternoon, I sat across from Ava Kim, a tenant-landlord attorney who looked barely older than me but spoke like someone who'd fought 100 battles. Her office smelled of stale coffee and file paper, a comfort compared to Carla's curated lavender candles. "They can't do what they did," Ava said after I explained everything. "Even if you were just a tenant, which you're not, changing the locks without a court order is a crime. In this state, Civil Code Section 789.3 makes it crystal clear. You don't lock someone out without due process." She slid a legal pad toward Bing. "And you, Mr. Vale, have something stronger than tenancy." I pulled out the envelope my father had given me 6 years ago, its seal still intact. Inside, the trust assignment and deed, my name printed in neat serif font. Taxes paid on time, every year, receipts tucked behind it. Ava's eyes narrowed, impressed. "So not only are you not a tenant, you're the owner of record, which means Carla and her son are unauthorized occupants. Here's what we do. You serve them a 30-day notice to quit. If they don't leave, we file an unlawful detainer. Sheriff handles the lockout. No shouting matches, no vigilante stunts." The clarity steadied me. I'd imagined rage, imagined storming the house and dragging Brandon off the couch myself, but Ava's voice made me see the path. "So I just put this notice on the door?" "Exactly," she said. "And for effect? Attach a redacted copy of the deed. Let them see whose name is really on the line." That night, I sat in the cab of my truck with the heater rattling, drafting the notice on borrowed letterhead from Ava's office. Every word carried the weight of law. Notice to quit, 30 days. Unlawful detainer. When I slipped the folded paper into an envelope and sealed it, I felt something I hadn't in weeks, not anger, not grief, power. I drove past the house once, headlights off, watching the glow of the living room windows. Carla's silhouette moved across the curtains, wine glass in hand. Brandon's laughter bled through even at a distance, the kind of careless sound made by someone who thought walls made him untouchable. I parked down the street and set the envelope on the passenger seat. Tomorrow, that paper would speak for me. Louder than any shouting match, sharper than any insult. 'Cause this battle wouldn't be won with fists or slammed doors. It would be won with ink and law. At exactly 9:02 a.m., the morning still damp with dew, Carla Whitmore shuffled out onto the porch in fuzzy slippers, a steaming mug balanced in one hand, her phone glued to the other. I sat in my truck a block away, engine off, watching through the windshield as she bent to pick up the envelope I had placed on the welcome mat an hour earlier. For a brief moment she looked puzzled, then curious. She slid a manicured finger under the seal, unfolded the papers, and read. Her face drained of colour before splitting into a scream so raw it jolted the neighbourhood awake. Not a startled cry, this was deeper, a primal howl, as if the foundation of her carefully built world had just cracked beneath her feet. Curtains shifted, neighbours peeked out, dogs barked. A delivery driver froze at the curb, clutching a package like a shield. Brandon stumbled to the door, hoodie half-zipped, eyes bleary. "What's wrong?" he muttered, snatching the paper. His lips moved silently over the words, confusion twisting into disbelief. Then his voice cracked. No, this is a lie." The paper shook in his hands, but the deed's black and white letters didn't. My name, stamped and recorded years ago, glared back at him. From the street, I could hear Carla's voice rising into a frenzy. "He's evicting us! That ungrateful brat! He's throwing his own family into the street!" She turned, spotting the cluster of neighbors watching, and collapsed into a performance. Tears, wails, hands clutched to her chest. "After everything I've done." Theatrics worthy of a soap opera. But I wasn't surprised. Ava had warned me. "They'll play the victim. Don't engage. Don't post. Save everything." By noon, Carla's story was online. Videos of her red eyes, captions about cruelty, hashtags dripping with moral outrage. Brandon took to TikTok, weeping into the camera, calling me heartless and the construction rat who betrayed his blood. Within hours, my phone filled with messages from cousins I hadn't heard from in years. "She's your stepmother, Ethan. How could you? Blood is blood." But blood, I thought bitterly, had done nothing to protect me from nights spent fixing faucets, paying bills, stocking the fridge while they lounged. Blood hadn't stopped them from changing locks and demanding $30,000, so I didn't answer. Instead, I archived everything. Screenshots of their posts, downloads of their videos, voicemail recordings with timestamps, evidence, as Ava had instructed. Every sob story they spun only strengthened my case. That evening, a new notification blinked on my phone, a message from Brandon. "You think you've won? If we're going down, we're taking the house with us. Watch." I stared at the screen, jaw tightening. Rage flared. But then I remembered the faint glow of the Ring doorbell camera I'd noticed, still mounted above the porch. Carla had never bothered to disconnect it from my account. Every clip still uploaded to my cloud. If Brandon tried anything, the camera, and Mrs. Patel's ever-watchful eyes next door, would catch it. I leaned back in my seat, a thin smile tugging at my mouth for the first time in weeks. They thought noise and lies could bury me, but the truth was louder, and I had the receipts. 30 days slid by like rust, creeping along steel. Slow, steady, inevitable. Every time I drove past the house, I saw the same scenes. Brandon's friends lounging on the porch with pizza boxes, music rattling the windows at 2 a.m., Amazon packages piled by the door. They weren't packing, they weren't even pretending. So I filed. With Ava's help, the unlawful detainer hit the courthouse docket, my name bold at the top as plaintiff. The clerk stamped it, the sound sharp as a gavel. Carla never showed. Instead, she filed a last-minute hardship declaration claiming she and her son had nowhere else to go. She even presented a screenshot of a supposed text from me promising they could stay. Ava smirked when she saw it. "Rookie mistake. Look at the metadata, XIF data. Shows this screenshot was generated 3 weeks after the date it claims. We'll shred this in court." The judge agreed. Carla's declaration dissolved like sugar in rainwater. A week later, the sheriff's notice arrived. Vacate by court order or face supervised lockout. I ironed my only dress shirt the morning of the lockout, polished my boots until they shone. No more dust, no more exhaustion written on my body. I would not face them as the broken laborer they had mocked. I would face them as the man who owned the house. Carla opened the door when I arrived, arms crossed, venom dripping from every word. "We're not leaving. You can't just toss people into the street. It's immoral." Behind her, Brandon clutched his gaming rig like a newborn, eyes red from nights of panic streaming his sob stories. I held up the sheriff's order, steady as a pillar. "You already did leave, on paper, weeks ago." Carla's laugh was sharp, desperate. "We have squatters' rights. You can't do this." Ava, standing at my side, answered calmly. "Squatters' rights apply to abandoned properties, not when the lawful owner has served notice and won in court." Your argument doesn't apply." The sound of tires crunching gravel broke the standoff. A black sedan pulled into the driveway. My chest tightened. Dad! For months I'd wondered where his loyalty would land. Would he look at me and see betrayal? Or look at her and see salvation from grief? He stepped out, travel-worn but steady, and for the first time in years his eyes met mine without flinching. He walked past Carla, past Brandon, and stopped in front of me. Slowly, he pulled an envelope from his jacket and pressed it into my hand. Divorce papers. "She never cared about you," he said quietly, voice thick with regret. "Or this family, I see that now." Carla's mask cracked. "Robert, no, listen." But Dad's voice cut sharper than mine ever could. "Enough. This isn't your house. It never was. Pack your things." For once, his words carried steel. And for the first time, I believed he meant them. The sheriff arrived at dawn. His presence a quiet force, stronger than all the shouting Carla could muster. A locksmith followed close behind, toolbox in hand. Carla planted herself in the doorway like a barricade, arms wide, voice pitched to the neighbors gathering on porches. "This is harassment, assault. You can't just throw a woman into the street," she cried, her tears flowing more for the audience than from pain. But the sheriff's expression didn't waver. He unfolded the court order, read it aloud in steady tones, and nodded to the locksmith. "Proceed." Metal clicked, tumblers fell. Within minutes, the locks Carla had boasted about were gone, replaced with new cylinders gleaming in the morning sun. "You'll regret this," she screamed at me. "I'll sue! I'll call the news!" "You already called TikTok," I said quietly, though I didn't raise my voice. Ava, standing at my shoulder, tapped her folder. "And every lie you posted is preserved. We're also serving you with notice of civil damages for the illegal lockout attempt and public defamation." Carla's mouth snapped shut, if only for a heartbeat. Behind her, Brandon was trying to slip out with his backpack bulging. My stomach sank. Something about the way the zipper strained set alarms ringing. "Open it," the sheriff ordered. Brandon froze, sweat beading. When he finally unzipped it, the contents clattered onto the porch. My mother Nora's jewelry box, her locket, the silver bracelet she wore every Sunday. Pieces I hadn't seen since Carla shoved them into the back of a cabinet years ago. "That's theft," Ava said, her voice razor-sharp. The sheriff nodded. "Return it, now." He handed the box to me with both hands, and for a moment I felt the weight of my mother's presence as though she'd placed it there herself. Carla's face contorted, fury breaking through her polished mask. "Those were gifts." Robert stepped forward, voice firmer than I'd ever heard it. "No, they were Nora's, and they'll stay with her son. This charade ends today, Carla." Neighbors murmured, some shaking their heads, some whispering, "I told you so." Mrs. Patel from next door stepped onto her porch and raised her phone. "I have the dates and videos, every night of noise, every time he threatened revenge. I'll testify if needed." Carla's bravado withered under the combined weight of law, witness, and truth. Brandon muttered curses, hugging his gaming console like a lifeline. But he didn't argue again. By noon, their things were on the curb. Bags, boxes, half-broken furniture, their laughter, their clutter, their voices, all pushed out into the daylight. The sheriff locked the door one final time and handed me the new keys. Cold metal, heavier than they should have been. "This is yours," he said. For the first time in years, I believed it. By sunset, the street had fallen silent. No more raised voices, no more muffled bass rattling through my childhood walls. The air around the house felt lighter, as if someone had finally lifted a curse that had clung for too long. I stepped inside barefoot, the cool wood against my feet, almost foreign after so many years of feeling unwelcome. One by one, I turned on every light. Not because I needed them, but because I could. The glow filled the rooms, chasing away shadows that had once belonged to Carla's control and Brandon's entitlement. I carried Nora's jewelry box into the living room, setting it carefully on the mantel where family photos had once been. From a storage bin I had kept at the site, I pulled out those photos, my mother's smile at Thanksgiving, me on her lap with frosting on my face, her arm around my dad, before grief hollowed him out. I re-hung them where Carla's stock art once hung, each nail a small declaration. This house remembers who it belongs to. I lit a cinnamon candle, the same brand my mum used to buy. The scent rose, warm and sharp, and for a moment I could almost feel her 2 long hugs around me again. Not as memory, as presence. Dad lingered in the doorway, shoulders slumped, guilt carved into every line of his face. "Ethan," he began, his voice uncertain, "I thought by leaving you here I was protecting you. I see now I abandoned you instead." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked him through the house, each room stripped bare of their noise but still scarred by their years of neglect. Protection isn't silence.
Dad, it's standing beside someone when they need you most. That's all I ever wanted. He nodded slowly, his throat working as though the words hurt to swallow. Then let me stand beside you now, if you'll let me. I looked at him, really looked, and saw not just the man who had left, but the man who had finally chosen to come back. There will be boundaries, I said firmly. Respect. No more secrets. If you want to rebuild,
It has to start clean. His eyes filled with something I hadn't seen since before Mom died. Humility. Understood. Later that night, I sat at the edge of my childhood bed, the room bathed in soft lamplight. The house no longer felt heavy. The silence wasn't punishment anymore, it was peace. Outside, the neighborhood exhaled, returning to its ordinary rhythm. Inside, I knew this victory wasn't just about bricks or deeds. It was about choosing law over rage, truth over lies, boundaries over the guilt of blood. I belonged here, and no one, no manipulation, no fraud, no stolen key could take that away from me again. I closed my eyes, the candle's glow flickering against the wall, and for the first time in years, I slept in my mother's house as its rightful son,